Welcome to The Bestie Perspective, a raw, unfiltered space where we explore the mind-body-spirit connection. Every week, we dive into personal growth, holistic healing, and life's ups and downs to inspire, support, and remind you you're never alone on this journey. Hey besties, thank you for joining us for today's episode. I'm Eileen, and of course I'm here with Lauren and Hannah as I lead the discussion today about family traumas and dramas. It's about family dysfunction and what we can do to start the healing process. I want to jump right in and start with listing some misguided teachings. So I'm going to run through them and then we will discuss each one. So first one, and these are common themes that we can find in family dynamics, but misguided teachings, that doesn't just mean parents. It can be any family members. It can be teachings that we just learned from the environment itself, not specifically someone saying these things to us or specifically talking about it. Number one, unconditional loyalty over personal well-being. Number two, silencing and ignoring conflict. 3, parents always know what's best. 4, shaming or guilt tripping when seeking independence. 5, perfectionism. And 6, forgive and forget at all costs. So I just want to point out to our listeners that maybe one really sticks out to you, maybe all of them, but every family is different and the combination of these can look very different depending on so many factors. So let's see what resonates with everybody. Number one, with unconditional loyalty over personal well-being. This is, we've heard it before, blood is thicker than water. Family above all else. You should do this because we're family. The idea that you must prioritize your family even at the expense of your own happiness, mental health, or personal growth. This can lead to enabling toxic behavior, neglecting care, and remaining in harmful family dynamics. So yeah, family above all else, it's a belief that family should always come first, no matter the circumstances. And this can lead to neglecting other important relationships or responsibilities, and sometimes even tolerating abuse or toxic behavior because it's quote unquote family. So, has anyone got stuff that's coming up for them when I explain unconditional loyalty over personal well-being?
Oh, yeah. I feel like when I reviewed this outline beforehand, I was like, oh my gosh, this first one right off the bat is just a highway to the road of resentment over time.
Yes.
Because you're taught one thing and then, to put your family first and at your own expense, whatever it is that it's costing you. And then over time, you may look back and have those regrets and reflect on and have more clarity, like, wow, why did I do that? Or like, how was my lens so narrow at the time?
Yeah.
I feel like it's hard to give yourself compassion after something like that after so long. And like, yeah, even you also pointed out neglecting your own needs, like your basic needs and wants, and putting other people's first for the sake of your
just peace in the
loyalty
family?
and just peace in the family or whatever the norm is. And yeah, all of that for me was just screaming in like big red flashing letters, resentment. This is what you're asking for.
Exactly right. And it sounds like regret for you to say, if I look back on sticking to that rather than doing what I actually wanted to do, there's regret that can come with that too.
Heck yeah.
And Lauren?
Yeah. And I can definitely resonate with a lot of what you pointed out. And that piece that also teaches you that you're not the priority.
Yes.
Right? And it's ingraining that, especially if it is through your family, it can ingrain that when you're just a child, that your family has to come first, that you need to put them above you. And, I think in certain ways, like I've experienced that, and, it ingrains that belief over time that other people's feelings and emotions are more important than yours. And so I feel like it trickles into so many other areas of life.
Right.
And even if it didn't, feel toxic at the time,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, I think it's something that builds up, and it just like shapes the way you start viewing yourself, which then can obviously lead to other things,
Well, like we were learning from Hannah in the last episode, that before the age of 7, we've got this core
Mhm.
foundation. So if we've got this core foundation of unconditional loyalty no matter what kind of relationships are you going to get into as a young adult? How are you going to be at work when you haven't taken your break or eaten enough or whatever, because your personal well-being is not important? And that could be a core understanding before the age of 7, sadly. Very good points, ladies. Love it. So, moving on to the second one, silencing and ignoring conflict. This is the notion that family problems should never be discussed outside the family. You keep it behind closed doors, right? So, many of us have been there. It's like that awkward family gathering where people are pretending and the energy of discomfort is in the air, right? Like, hi, yeah, nicey nice. No, you didn't. I don't remember you calling Aunt Sally a bitch or anything like that. Yeah, the potato salad is great, right? Just this.
Don't give a fuck about no potato salad.
it breeds inauthenticity. And for me, I'm not good at faking. I'm not good at faking it. And but it does encourage the suppression of emotional needs, feelings of isolation, and enable harmful behaviors or abuse to continue without addressing the issue. So, yeah, I know we were chuckling with that, awkwardness, but yeah, silencing and ignoring conflict. What comes up for you, Lauren?
I think it almost feels like a knee-jerk reaction for so many people
Sure.
too. And I know I've experienced this as well, but like that feeling of keeping the peace, right? And it's just kind of like, okay, well, if we just like pretend it's not there, like maybe it won't be there,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just think that a lot of people do it to thinking that it's just going to solve the problem if we pretend it's not there,
Yeah.
you know? But obviously it just like the first learning, it leads to resentment, because it's just bottling up something, glazing over it, not actually talking it through and communicating whatever it is.
And I feel like it may not need to be like a full-blown sit down in communicating whatever it is, as you say. Like,
Right.
what if it's just, hey, yeah, it's great to see you. I just want to let you know I hate that happened. I don't ever want that to happen again, but I've sorted through my stuff. It's okay if you don't need to talk about it. What if it's as simple
Yeah.
as that? But we don't do it. We don't do anything like that. Well,
I
maybe some people.
I
was gonna
agree.
say.
Yeah. And I think like I'm in the same place as you, where like now I'm at a point where like I don't like holding that back, right? Because I'm trying to live more in my authenticity. And when I feel other people doing it, like I know something happened
Yes.
and they're not saying so, I'm like, like it irks me, because I'm like, come on, like why can't we just like vocalize this? If we speak it, it'll like put it out there, talk about the elephant in the room or whatever, even if it's not a full sit down, like you said. Like I think just acknowledging it kind of dissipates
Yeah,
it,
it can. Yeah.
When you brought up this point, it made me think about like just in general family holidays and birthdays and celebrations where more of the extended family might get together. And I think about the stories of people who have like in-laws who feel like they don't like them, or just like a lack of feeling accepted or something along those lines. And like that gets ignored because, I mean, when you marry into a family, you want to get along with them most of the time. That's my understanding. I mean, that was my intention. That was actually one of my like top must-have list, was that my husband had to like be close with his family and get along with his family. And I had to like them too.
I think mine was actually like, he cannot be a mama's boy.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, I think a lot of the listeners will relate to this particular one, because we've all had parents and other extended family talk about extended family being like, oh, you know, she's such a bitch, like you were saying. And then when they're in the same room, there's no problems. They act like they're besties. And you're like, oh my God. I can't believe this is real life.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, it's, oh, and you're just walking on eggshells and pretending, and this gossip and all of that, it just breeds trouble. It really does. Okay, I know this one's it's going to resonate with people. Number 3. Parents always know what's best. The belief that parents or elders are always right or should have authority over our decisions, regardless of their actions or knowledge. This can lead to toxic control, lack of autonomy, or suppressing individuality.
I don't mind sharing first. I think this one brought up a lot for me, like some definitely some points that I think a lot of parents, for example, end up shutting down their children and their emotions simply because it's easier to say, because I said so.
I said so.
Yeah. Right? Like, how many times have we heard about that, right? And then also, I think the kind of parents should be trusted by default can be dangerous too, because like we know there have been plenty of parents who've done horrible things to their children. So like instilling this belief that like they're to be trusted like by default can also cause children to think that whatever the parent does, regardless how it makes them feel, is okay or is right. Also, I feel like what goes to this point is like older people have more wisdom, right? Like that kind of plays into this too, where like we all know there's a ton of adult children out there, right? So that number of years doesn't really equate to emotional intelligence and regulation. I feel like that's another thing that came up for me. Like just because you're older doesn't mean you actually know better, you know? And I think there are a lot of people in older generations who tend to look down on younger generations. And then also just like you also hear different parents saying like, oh, like they just don't know what's best for them, or children don't know what's best for them. And I think that's also teaching children not to listen to their own inner voice and wisdom.
I mean, it's like you're going to breed the 30-year-old living in your basement if you just ingrain in them that you know what's best and they don't. Yeah. They may never.
Right. And then you're going to complain about the 30-year-old in your basement, you know? And it's like, but you taught them.
You created that monster.
Yeah. And so I think those are some of the main things that came up for me.
It makes me want to like share a story real quick. Now that I'm thinking about it, when I was younger, there was a TV show where, and gosh, I must have been like, maybe I was 7 or around that age, but it's a TV show where they have 2 stories and it's actors reenacting the story, and one is fake and one is not true, and the audience at home has to guess. So one is a real story and one is made up, but sometimes the really bizarre one is the true one. So we're all doing it as a family, and there's one in particular where my parents agree on one, and I'm like, why can't this one be true? It was kind of like a hospital miraculous kind of story. And I was just like, Mom, but Dad, like, why wouldn't this one be true? I just didn't understand how they got to that conclusion. And I believe my mom had said, "'Cause Eiley, we've just lived longer." And I was just like, oh, okay, well, maybe it's just because they're older, just because they've been on this planet longer than I have. And guess who got it right? moi.
You did.
And that was like, I remember one of the earlier times where I was just like, oh, mommy and daddy don't know everything. I felt something like, no, I feel like this one is right. It makes sense. It feels true. And they're like, nope, nope. And they stayed quiet. They didn't say anything. But I just remember that sitting with me like, they don't know everything. Wow. Okay. And that stuck with me. But Hannah, what about you with parents always know what's best?
Oh my gosh. Y'all, everything you've talked about so far has my brain going in so many different directions. But I'm going to try to land in, and make it more cohesive. Like the thing I think about is, just circling back to like not letting your children grow up because you don't give room for them to learn what's best on their own road to adulthood. And, it's one thing by providing safety to your child when they're young. You're the parent. You're supposed to keep them safe. In a way, you do have to know what's best when you're looking out for their safety.
Sure.
But, when in an example like what you just talked about, Island, their safety is not at risk.
Exactly.
And so I think that also brings up the point of when we weave back in like subconscious talk and all of that is children are a lot less clogged up than we are. They're more of a blank canvas. They haven't had so much time and programming from culture and society and parents and classmates and friends and boyfriends and all of that when they're so young and innocent, for lack of better words. They're not clogged. So in some ways, maybe they might know better than you as an adult who is more clogged up.
Yeah. Beautifully put. It could be like they were just connected with source on a level that we've not been for years. So, could look at them like little gods and goddesses.
Yeah. And it's like a perspective of innocence and naivety too.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes when you look at it from this like simpler lens, you can actually see things more clearly.
Right.
Like Hannah's saying, instead of things being clogged, right? But it's like, yeah, when you take out all the bullshit and you're just like, you only have so much to go on, then it totally makes sense why kids just say things sometimes that just like get you and you're like, wow. Oh, I didn't think of that, or I wasn't thinking about it that way, right?
Have you guys ever seen videos of what like kids have said, what is love? They just answer the question.
No.
Oh my gosh, some of these kids come up with the best answers. Yes, we're going to have to Google that later.
Okay, that sounds really cute.
Yes.
I want to do that.
So
I literally used to ask my mom all the time when I was young, like, what is love? Like, how do you know when you're in love with someone? Like, I tried to give her those big questions when I was like under 10. And she was like, Hannah, you just stop asking me these questions. You know when you know. Bless her soul. I was so curious about things way beyond my age.
Okay, so let's get into the next one. Number 4 was shaming or guilt tripping when seeking independence. So it's the idea that it's wrong or disrespectful to pursue your own path outside of the family unit, especially if it involves moving away or seeking a career or life that doesn't fit the family mold. This can breed guilt, resentment, and insecurity in individuals trying to establish their own identity. And I will even say that there can be a huge cultural connection to this one, because in my circle, I've seen this particularly in my friends from Asian and Indian cultures, even Latino cultures, but I feel like, it's like you're going to be a doctor and that's what we are, or a lawyer, and that's all your option is, and that's what the family expects of you. And you're going to get married to this person or whatever it may be, where it's ingrained in the culture. Was one thing that came up for me about shaming or guilt tripping when seeking independence. So, Hannah, I'll pass this one to you. What came up?
That's so funny that that's what you've noticed in your circle, at least with those particular cultures, because when I read this prompt, it immediately made me think of the movie Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah, there you go.
This so
Oh
like for
my
our
gosh.
listeners, if you have not watched this movie, this guy, and you want to watch it, okay, pause, skip this
Right.
part. But like this guy, he lives in New York. He starts dating this girl that I forgot how they met each other, but he is living like a life that his family does not know about. Like they basically don't know anything about him. They didn't know he's dating this girl. And then he ends up bringing her home to a wedding. And he's crazy rich. And they're expecting her to be like crazy rich too. They have these expectations and on who he should and shouldn't be dating. And so, like you were saying, like how he decided to do something that strayed away from what the family unit would have approved of. And he followed his heart and tried to find love without judgment, without condition, without, like a bunch of money in the way. She didn't know he was rich. So he was seeking that true love without, he was trying to avoid women who just wanted him for his money. And his family didn't approve of that. And I feel like the other point I'll say is I feel like it ties in with the last one of parents always know what's best, because then I feel like they use that knowledge or wisdom or whatever experience they have in life to say, okay, I know the best. I know what's good for you. And then they try to guilt and shame you into believing what's best is like what they think, if that makes sense.
Oh, that's such a good example. The movie, it's one of my favorite movies, actually. So much so that if we're watching...
Me too.
Yes, I've watched it so many times at this point, too. So much so that my husband, if we're watching regular TV, he'll be like, Donnie, he calls me Donnie, Crazy Rich Asians is on.
Oh, I have to watch it again. I haven't seen it in a while, actually, but I remember really enjoying it the time that I did watch it. I think for me, for this one, some of the things that come up or some of the thoughts that came to mind thinking about this one was how a couple different beliefs that I feel like are out there around this, which is like independence is rejection, right? And needing independence is selfish. Wanting space means you're ungrateful. I think there are, even just going off of what you said already, a lot of very selfish beliefs around people needing space from family and this responsibility even to always be in contact or constantly available, right? And it doesn't really leave any room for situations that people are going through that require them to put themselves first and step back and like really think about what they want and need. I definitely think there's this layer of pressure that's there. It's almost like that knee-jerk reaction when, even if you think about like a little kid and, you say like, oh, well, I'm going to go do this. And they're like, but what about me? What about me? Right? Yeah. And it's like that FOMO, don't leave me out feeling. And it's almost like that's what it feels like, is almost that more, I don't want to say like childish view, but like that view of like, but like, what about us?
Yeah.
What about me? What about our feelings and our whatever, without first trying to put yourself in the person's shoes? Like that, where I think families can do that a lot of the times, where they instantly think about themselves and how they're impacted instead of actually thinking about, well, what is this person going through that's even driving them to this point?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I think, don't backstep like that. It's kind of like that me thing, right? The me first complex that's kind of out there, where it's like, I'm immediately thinking about how I'm affected in this situation and how dare you, instead of like,
But even that point, like, how dare you? It's almost like, I brought you into this world and I had to feed you and I had to take care of you all these years. So now you owe me. How dare you want independence? And that's so unfair. That's so selfish in and of its sense, too, to have that mentality. Because it's like, child did not ask you to bring them into this world. Now, maybe
Right.
on a soul spiritual level, different conversation, different day. But but that's that guilt tripping part of, you now owe me. This isn't like, we don't have kids so that we can lock them into our goals.
I think that's common too. Like you hear people who are like, oh, I wanted to have kids so I knew that I would have somebody to take care of me someday.
Yeah.
Or even I know culturally too, it's a big thing where it's expected the parents move in at a certain age and start living with you in your home with your family.
Yeah.
So there is definitely a lot of expectation around that for sure.
Yeah. So number 5, perfectionism. The belief that every family member must fulfill a specific role perfectly. There could be a mother that expects her perfect daughter to be a perfect wife, perfect mother, like all the things, right? So this can cause significant stress and feelings of inadequacy if they fall short of those expectations. Can also suppress individuality. But, it begs the question, is the pressure worth preserving the family name? What's hitting you guys the most with this idea?
So for me, I feel like this wasn't really so relevant in my family, but I really feel like pressures in school, when I think back to like childhood times, like performing academically to get good grades, or like performing well in sports to win, and having that pressure from your parents to strive for perfection and be the best of the best. And if you aren't the best of the best, then you don't get that validation, and maybe you let down your family, or they become disappointed in you because you didn't like meet their expectations, or kind of put some respect on their name, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I think something more so that I could relate to from my own experience is making a mistake, or a decision that was stupid, and then your family or your parents become disappointed in you, or say something like, I thought you were better than this, or make you feel like shunned in some way. Then it's like, oh my God, like my family doesn't accept me or doesn't love me. Like that might be the message you receive if you aren't perfect. If you make a mistake, then you just lost it all. You got to earn it back.
Yeah. Yeah. Put on the dunce cap and sit in the corner.
Yeah. And I don't think that was ever like my parents' intention. I think that was just their way of trying to teach me a lesson as a kid. But like over time, like seeing them parent my brother and sister in similar ways too, it's like, okay, even if it's not something directed at me, this is how I'm learning to be safe and accepted in my family unit. And so I need to strive to be a certain way to earn that.
Same thing for me. I don't know that there wasn't like certain, at the time, it didn't feel like blatant standards, that were out there to live up to. But what still ended up, I think, getting ingrained in me, or like something that I've seen in other people too, is like mistakes make you unlovable or disappointing, or that being messy and emotional or flawed is weakness. I know is something that's seen in society a lot, right? Like if you're not put together and you're not like perfect all the time, right? If you don't show up on social media as this perfect person living this perfect life with a perfect family, right? Like how many times like do we go on social media and like we see somebody and we know their life is falling apart. We're like, but wait, it looks like everything's together though on social media, but like I know the behind the scenes here, and that's just not lining up, right? But I think there's also this perfectionism that I think society expects out of us. And I think it just puts a message out there that we can't be authentic and real with our feelings, or people won't love and accept us. And I think that's masking, right, has become a very popular term now. I think it's causes people to constantly mask or to bottle up their feelings and emotions and just like hide behind this front of a white picket fence, right? And like
Yeah.
this perfect little home and family model, when the reality is everybody has shit going on, you know? So like, even if you see this person who looks like they have it all together, you can almost 100% guarantee that they don't have everything together, you know? And I think that's something we just need to remind ourselves of, because it's so easy, especially when you're just scrolling and you're seeing like perfect after perfect after perfect after perfect. You know, it's so easy to just be like, oh God, I have this going on. Does that mean, you know, whatever? Or I'm having a really shitty day today. Like, this person looks like they never have a shitty day, when it's just not reality, you know?
So it's like you're talking about it. Well, Hannah's talking about it inside the home, and that's where it starts. But it's like got to be in so many people's homes. If it's now this mass scale, as you're talking about, in society,
Right.
where we're getting in debt so that we look good on Instagram. Like, people
Yes.
are leasing these cars that they can't afford, and all this nonsense, and credit cards being run up and stuff so that they look cute on their TikTok or whatever it is. Just like,
Right.
so funny. It's aiming for perfectionism by not being real is now what's being bred. So interesting.
Right. It's just like the look of perfectionism,
Right.
you know, or somebody having a purse or the best shoes out there, but they don't even have a house or a place to live sometimes. But damn, do they have those shoes or that
Yeah.
purse, you know?
Or they'll fake it. They go over to somebody's
Yeah.
house and pretend that it's theirs even. Like, it can get crazy.
Yeah. And so, so I think it's interesting that we kind of had two different, like, how it can be in the home, but also just the pressure of society too.
Yeah. And then the last one, number 6, was forgive and forget at all costs. The idea that forgiveness means you must forget and accept past wrongs from family members, even when they've caused significant harm. This can lead to unresolved trauma and prevent healthy boundaries from being established. And we're also going to come back, like, deep dive into this one a little bit more, and the idea of radical forgiveness. I'll speak on that a little bit further. But yeah, what comes up for you guys with forgive and forget at all costs? Hannah!
I'll go. So this one, I mean, I'll share more on this, I think, a little bit later, but over time, when you just have like the same thing happen over and over again, like you have an unhealthy pattern in your home, and then no one ever says, I'm sorry, or talks about it. There's an element of even silencing and ignoring conflict a little bit, but then it never gets addressed. And then it turns into forgive and forget at all costs, just to, keep the peace. And I think also, like, there's even an element in some families where no one knows how to cope with what they're experiencing. Maybe they don't know how to process their emotions or how to regulate their nervous system. And so they forgive and forget just so they don't have to deal with anything, or like say I'm sorry and like potentially activate things they're not comfortable with or don't know how to process. And that is one of the first things that comes to my mind with forgive and forget.
It's so crazy. When you just said that, Hannah, it just had me thinking about how I've even known people who've literally been like, oh, I don't have the time to deal with this right now, or I don't have the capacity to deal with it right now. Or like, even if it's like a direct problem with their spouse or like somebody that they're really close to, that like they don't feel like they have the time to like right. Like, if, like you said, if they bring it up, like whatever's going to unfold with it. It's like, I feel like we see that where, people end up just going to the forgive and forget at all costs because that's easier than actually bringing it up and potentially unloading everything that opens,
Yeah.
I had a couple things actually that came up for me with this one. I think I just had some of that stuff that I wanted to respond to Hannah's, but there were two things that popped up, I think, thinking about this one for me. One was forgiveness is a moral duty, even if there's no accountability. That idea, right? That many people believe that to be a good person, they always need to forgive, right? Regardless of accountability. I think that ends up that isn't promoting real healing and repair. It's sometimes people just think like, do they really forgive, or are they really forgiving? Or are they just saying like, oh, I forgive you because it's the moral thing to do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's what the Bible says.
Right.
It is. That honestly is something that I thought of, where it's like the Bible says to forgive, and it's like, okay, but like, is it really talking about blindly forgiving people or being open to forgiveness, right? And like actually working through the healing and repair. I think there are definitely, two ways you can take it, but I think a lot of people just think like, if I'm going to be a good person, then I'm just going to forgive them. And it's like, okay, well, are you deeply, truly forgiving them? Or are you like just telling yourself that you're forgiving them so you can quote unquote fit this good person mentality?
Yeah. Do the
You know what I
things
mean?
you should do.
Yeah, exactly. So that came up for me. And then also, I feel like something we've heard too is like, you shouldn't stay angry or hurt, just get over it. And I think that is just a disservice to our voice and our feelings to just, quote, get over it, right? Plus, there's not just some magic button that you can press and just be like, okay, I'm going to be done now. Boop, right? Like, I'm over it.
I forgot to press the
like,
get over it button.
Yep. So I'm still fucking pissed, right? Yeah. It's like there's not a little, like just a quick little button we can press and get over something. Processing, healing, and repair needs to happen for people to actually move on. So those things also make me want to say that I'm excited to share more about this in our next episode, where we deep dive into what makes a good apology and how we can all learn to mess up better and repair better.
Nice. Yes, yes, yes. Well,
I'm very excited for that.
It's going to be good. But even the forgiveness piece, I wanted to add that sometimes that doesn't mean you keep the person in your life. You forgive them, so therefore you have to keep them around is not necessarily the same thing.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I agree.
yeah, I'll just end it with that note. And I wanted to pick one of the ones that I really resonated with and share my family experience with number 2, silencing and ignoring conflict. So I want you ladies to think about, one that maybe you can actually give an example. And listeners, we're going to, use discretion. We know that family is listening and that kind of thing. But I think that some of our real life stories can resonate with you. So yeah, I'll start with my silencing and ignoring conflict example. So, I mean, just first to say the problem with it is that it can promote dishonesty. Like if you think about it, it's one thing to just not talk about it, but then it can just kind of fester into dishonesty itself. So what I experienced is there's just so much freedom in telling the truth. That discernment and discretion versus drama creation is different though. So like you want to be speaking your truth because it's healing, but you must have self-reflection and catch ourselves if our hurt is leading us to speak on things or do things out of spite. Like, I'm going to tell the truth so that everyone knows who they really are. No, that's not what I'm talking about here, right? Right. So there's an ongoing court case in my family, and it made local news in another state, and it did not shine any kind of good light on a particular family member that it involved. So out of respect for the story being very delicate and still ongoing, I won't go into much more detail, but it is easy to see why someone would want to ignore and silence truth in this matter. So I've even come to a place of having grace for the fact that this had even shown up, So here's my example of handling a smaller issue within this family situation. So it was with a particular family member who has flat out made effort to lie on the individual's behalf that's not looking very good right now. So it wasn't even pertaining to any of that, but it makes sense because this is all in the midst of everything. But it was something she did directly to me. She accidentally left me a voicemail. And what was spoken in that voicemail showed me that she was purposefully not answering my call. I, in fact, was returning her call. She must have butt dialed me and not known that she was calling me. So, as she's seeing my incoming call, she's recording a voicemail. And thankfully, it was nothing extreme, but enough for her to admit that I was a bother, that she didn't have time for me. It was, oh, what now, Eileen? She does not want to make herself available to me. So, like, just comments around that, to where, I mean, ouch. Great. That doesn't feel good for any family member to say things with that kind of energy. And I never told her until a year later. I stayed silent. I ignored her texts from being too hurt and angry. I think I also didn't want to lash out and be like, why the F are you even texting or pretending to like me, right? And I know that my inner work led me to a solid place where even though this wasn't bothering me anymore, I got to a place where I was over it, but that I'm in the right to speak up about it as well. Like, the silencing and ignoring didn't have to continue. So I said in a text, I said, look, you hurt me when this happened. And I let her know. Butt dialing, voicemail, yada, yada. I said, you're reaching out to me like nothing happened with all those other texts she was sending. And, I even said, that I've kept proof if you try to deny it, because of when you're in the silencing and ignoring, it breeds dishonesty. And I'm not allowing that anymore. It wasn't to hold on to it so that I could, have ammo. It's like, we've got to stop this pretending. So I did say something along the lines of like, you'll have to forgive me if I don't exactly feel like I can trust our conversations and just respond to you like nothing. So her next text message in response, 0 apology, 0 acknowledgement, and she informed me of the passing of a relative. So I told her, like, I understood that I had already found out through another family member, but I told her I understood that this death takes priority, but that she can acknowledge my previous text another time. I wasn't going to allow the ignoring and silencing to continue. It's like, I hear you. I understand. And you can show me love, respect, acknowledgement when you're ready. Needless to say, she's not reached out. And she has that right. That's one thing I want listeners to hear. Like, we can't control how the other person will react. Now, in terms of manifestation, there are underlying beliefs and assumptions that I can change, and I do know that. I know I played a part in creating this based on my beliefs and assumptions about that family member. That being said, as I process the specifics of all of that, I allow her to be as she is. What's priority here is that I made my expectations and boundaries clear. I am loving and respecting myself enough to be authentic and not pretend. And if we really think about it, even though the most mature option would be for her to take accountability and acknowledge something here, she is at minimum respecting me enough to keep quiet and not send me those surface level text messages anymore. The ones that had the undertone of being fake and insincere. So I spoke up for myself too. I expressed what I needed, and it took time. There have been plenty of things where I maybe just need a day to process, like something happens with my husband, maybe even less than a day, and then I can talk about it. But this one took time. And there was so much heaviness because of her involvement regarding the court case and supporting lies that I know that's why it took me a little bit longer with this one. So no judgment to people out there that may take longer than others. Like, there's so many factors at play when it comes to family dynamics, and everyone's processing looks different. So thank you for allowing me to be discreet about the situation while at least sharing the essence of the family situation. Any comments, ladies, or do you guys want to just go into your examples? Lauren, do you want to just give your example, or you want to say anything about mine?
I mean, I feel like you covered, yours pretty well
worries.
as far as like how you handled everything. And I think just to highlight again, even that everybody takes their own time to process and really decide how they want to handle things. So even just to let people know that if you're being silent and discreet about something right now, it doesn't mean that that has to be it forever.
Yes.
Right? Like you can do work and inner work and healing if you have that goal, right? Or manifestation, even, right? For the outcome that you want, and get to that point of, confrontation or whatever it might be, right? Putting it out there. So I think that that's just another thing to highlight again, is that everybody takes a different time and processes it in a different way. Like you said with Eddie, it could be a day or less, right? But this situation had a lot more weight to it, a lot more factors. You were a lot more emotionally and heavily emotionally involved in the situation, right? So it totally makes sense that it took you the time that it did. But also, I think because, like you said earlier, you're so authentic, right? So with her just sending you these like surface level texts, it felt like such a misalignment. Like, hold on, I know how you actually feel about me. You literally sent me this voicemail.
Yeah.
And now you're saying happy 4th of July or like whatever it is, just like nothing. And like, but also not that, like she didn't say that, but also like nothing's going on at all.
Right.
When this huge thing is happening in your family.
Yeah.
So I think too, that misalignment for you probably also just added another layer of emotions for you to process, which added to that time,
Yeah, that is so true.
But I think you also grew so much in this process as well, that I think that the person you were when you handled it the way that you did is different than the person who would have handled it a year before.
So true. Yeah, absolutely right. Even though it took me a while to get there, like if it happened today, it would not take as long for me to respond. Yeah. Very good point.
Yeah. And it's like working that muscle, right? That we're training in the mind.
So true.
So I guess I did have something to say about it. I was like, I don't know, you said it well.
It was great input. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. But so for me, I was kind of reflecting in general how like I'm going to talk about perfectionism for mine. But as I was listening to your story, I was like, oh, I didn't specifically immediately think of a personal family story that tied with this, but one did come to mind now that I feel like can segue into my main reflections about this particular misguided learning. But when I was younger, and again, want to preface this with, I don't think that these were certain intentions behind like my parents or whatever when they said these certain things to me as a kid, but it ended up having this effect anyway. So, and I preface that to say, so my brother was actually, he was a more difficult child, right? Like a little more emotionally hot, and just like, he needed a little bit more attention, right? Where I was the more like calm, good child. I always thank my mom for trying again for another one after she had my brother. But, but anyways, my brother's 4 years older than me. And a lot of the time when we are younger, it's like, say brothers, sisters, siblings, right? They get into scuffles all the time. That's like such a normal thing that happens, right? When we're young. And a lot of the times though, like my brother would be, like more emotionally high or going off of it in a different way. And I was told like, oh, Lauren, you just need to be the bigger person here. Like I know that you're the younger sister, but you've got to be the bigger person. And I remember internally when I was younger being like, it's not fair though. Like he's the one that's wrong. Or, like I remember feeling like, why do I have to be the bigger person? I'm the younger sister.
Yeah.
And at the time, like as a kid, it was just frustrating because it was like, fine, I guess I can be the bigger person because I have the capacity for it. And, I went ahead and did that. But I think that has like led to this kind of perfectionism weaving through my life. And perfectionism for me showed up as the pressure to be the good one or the good girl, right? Just be a good girl, go with the flow. Oh, be the bigger person, right? Be the peacekeeper, right? Because it was easier for me to take on maybe blame or be the bigger person and be the peacekeeper than it was to do that with my brother. So it was kind of an easier default for me to do that, even though I was the younger one. So I didn't want to rock the boat, disappoint anyone, or be a source of tension. So I put a lot of pressure on myself to get everything right, stayed quiet when I wanted to speak up, and tried to manage everyone else's emotions before my own. And on the surface, it probably looked like I had it all together. But underneath, I was carrying this quiet fear of, what if people only love me because I'm being the good girl? And I really believed that. And in hindsight, this was a lot of reflection. I really believe that in order to be liked, loved, or accepted, I had to be the version of me that made others feel good. Whether that meant being the perfect friend, daughter, sister, partner, that belief made it hard to be honest with myself about how I was actually feeling. I silenced my own discomfort just to avoid the possibility of someone else feeling disappointed, uncomfortable, or upset. And it's taken a lot of unlearning, but I've come to realize that perfectionism isn't what makes me lovable. Being real is, and living in my authenticity, which I know I've mentioned in other episodes, and embracing the messy days, the hard emotions, and my full humanity has helped me find that peace in my own skin. And the people who are meant to be in my life won't only love the polished parts of me, they'll love me through the vulnerable, unfiltered, and imperfect moments too. And that kind of love is the one that's worth holding on to.
Very well put.
Yeah.
There's a lot of independence in that discovery as well.
Yeah. And even just feeling like, I thought I had to be this way to be a good girl, even, right? When it's like, no, silencing yourself doesn't make you a good girl.
And especially when you have a family member that's like allowed to act out. It's like adding salt to the wound.
Yeah. And it's like, and again, I know that wasn't my parents' intention at the time, but like it was hard, honestly, like as a younger sibling having to be the bigger one, so it's like interesting. And even like those kind of interactions, how it kind of created that belief in my life,
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. What about you, Hannah? Do you have a particular one and an example you can give?
For mine, I went with forgive and forget because when I was a young girl, my household was a pretty rowdy place at times. It wasn't like that all the time. I don't want to make it seem like I came from like a crazy, super unstable household. But when there was conflict, there was conflict and you didn't want to be there. Yelling, emotional chaos, dysregulation of all sorts. I mean, doors slamming, your throat hurts so bad afterwards because how loud you didn't know you could yell. But still, somehow you were never actually heard. Actually, fun note, fun fact I learned a couple years ago at this festival. This lady informed us, when your nervous system is activated in fight or flight, when your sympathetic nervous system is on, you're hearing things like behind you that you're running from. Like your brain is wired to hear things behind you, like to hear if that bear is still chasing you or something. And so she was like, when you're yelling at someone, they're most likely not hearing you because their brains are not wired like that.
Oh, so next time I'll tell my
wow.
husband, let you turn around so I can yell
Turn
around.
Next time I'm gonna bitch someone out, I'm gonna walk behind him and be like, let me tell you something.
You better turn around so I can tell you, give you a piece of my mind.
Right?
Oh my gosh. So yeah, fun fact. And then so that explains why we were never actually heard despite our
Right. All your efforts.
our sore throats. Yeah. And that type of environment, I think, it deeply shaped how I regulate my own emotions and thoughts and nervous system. And there was definitely some silencing and ignoring conflict involved there because stuff would happen. People would storm off to their rooms or go up. One of the family members would like go out for a drive and just like leave everybody else. And like we were all just kind of like left sitting in our own mess.
Mm.
And there wasn't always like an apology. It was just you come back after the storm stopped and then there was still mess everywhere, but nobody cleaned it up.
Gotcha.
It was never addressed.
Wow.
So just went on with your life and pretend like it didn't happen. And I feel like that breeded the fact that it happened over and over again. It was a pattern for our family because no one ever intervened really to try to stop, and at least from my perspective, and we're talking about under 8 years old, 10 years old. So I'm like really having to pull back the files and try to remember. But from what I do remember, I don't think anyone ever really addressed or tried to change it or try something new. So there was a lot of forgiving and forgetting and just trying to silence the conflict until all of a sudden there was conflict again and the same thing happened. And I coped by trying to soothe people around me, like family members who were also overwhelmed, because in a way it gave me a sense of control. It felt like what I did worked. I could help calm the storm, at least for a little while, in at least one person. And that made it feel reliable and maybe even predictable, which brought me a sense of comfort in the midst of so much unpredictability. That we talked a little bit about it in the last episode, I think, but how, like, if you grow up in environments where you have to keep your head on a swivel or become hyper aware of people's feelings and needs, like it can make for a great empath. But, when you're dealing with that as a child, very, very young, I have a very good gift. I'm trying to see it as a gift now that I'm older, but like when I was younger, that was my sense of safety, was like trying to control other people's emotions. And so I became highly attuned to that. And reflecting on it further, like after about 10 years old, the family dynamic changed and there was a noticeable softening of the household. The water finally felt like it was settling, more breathing room. And that change was healing in itself because it was a different environment for me. I want to follow that up by saying, like, we went through all of those years together and I love my family now more than ever. Honestly, I didn't think me and my sister would ever be friends because I was such an annoying little sister. But the truth is, I have learned on the family level that none of us are perfect, and that's not the point. But what matters is how each of us has grown, literally every single one of us, through it all. I think the stuff that we went through as a family when we were all younger, we've learned how to like hold space for more conflict instead of fearing it, and like addressing some of those things that maybe would have been silenced in the past. And because of that, I feel like that's opened up more room for, vulnerability, but also connection.
Yeah.
and of actually feeling closer to my family, because when you're able to have a conversation where you can regulate your emotions and help other people navigate theirs, then like I really enjoy that opportunity for connection that it's given us
Opportunity
through it
for
all.
connection. Yeah. Yeah. Opportunity for connection. Well put. And, just to say with all of our examples here, as we discussed in the Manifestation Madness episode, they are reflecting something to us, these situations we've talked about. So for me, what am I ignoring or silencing in my life or in myself? Silencing and ignoring is a form of consent, right? So I encourage people to speak up if you do not consent to what's taken place. And I guess that to some degree goes into yours, Hannah, but yours could also be with forgive and forget. What do I need to bring to the light? What needs to be discussed and talked about? What in me is worth making myself and others aware of? And so Lauren's example for perfectionism is, when will I claim I'm enough and lovable? What will it take to see me as perfect without outside validation? All of these things. Our family is always still in some way, shape, or form reflecting in us something that we need to address. So, what has worked for me in shifting family dynamics, in healing the traumas and dramas? I will say, first and foremost, distance and space. For me to process some of the things when it comes to anger, resentment, whatever else it may have been that I was feeling, like I needed to take my leave of absence. And it's not to sit there and punish them or anything. It's like to love them from afar when it's too hot to approach, too hot to touch right now. I'm going to work on my stuff. And it's not like you start out at love, you process things and get back to a point where you can love them. And even at that place, doesn't mean you need to tell them to their face. You can send it with a thought, right? So that had been helpful for a time. Then creating my own family. Creating your own family can be a great way to heal, as long as you're not repeating with a new family. But I will say, having my husband and his family, trustworthy friends like my girls right here and some others nearby as well. And then lastly, speaking up for myself when calm and collected, because I've spoken right then and there. I've done it before I've become calm and collected, and it never ended well. And it can be a struggle, but like you feel like you need to get it out for certain people. So having the strength and self-control to sit with your own emotions and process before approaching. And I'll clarify and say not to sit and stew, not even to deeply and thoroughly analyze, but to observe and let it pass. Just because sometimes a deep dive and analyzing is actually a recipe for more festering. It's like festering in the problem and not the solution. I've had to own and say, like, I am annoyed, I am mad, and I am the one that needs time, after being calm and collected and just owning that rather than, blaming others for what they did. So, besties, what has worked with you, with your family?
I'll go ahead and jump in because I wanted to tag along with what you said about starting your own family. And I absolutely adore my husband's family. I consider them my own family, and like I've learned a lot from them because they have a very different family dynamic with extended family and immediate. Very different dynamic. Still, I mean, no family's perfect, so I don't want to be like, they're the golden family. I could speak no harm. We're all family. But I love that you included that one as a way, because I feel like that, even if you have a friend who you're able to witness a different family dynamic so that it opens up your perception of what is out there, what is possible, and how to see different ways of dealing with conflict, how to address problems in a way that everyone gets to have their piece heard and like come to a conclusion, say I'm sorry and mean it. All of those things you can learn from, in an environment outside of yours, whether it's starting your own family, I think, or even like, learning from people who you trust. Like my big 4 that I reflected on in my own time were forgiveness and acceptance, finding out what unconditional love meant for me and like how that applies to my family, as well as like other areas. But, in this case in particular, how that applies to family in a healthy way. And then letting go of expectations, which I know is also like one of yours too.
Mm-hmm.
When you're stepping away and just trying to love from afar.
Yeah.
All of those things have been game changers for me because I realized, my topic was forgive and forget. I felt like that one was really big in my family. And I realized that holding on to resentment and wishing that things had gone differently only kept me stuck in the past and stealing energy that I could have been giving to more worthwhile things, because I would catch myself thinking and ruminating on something that happened. And really, I should be like studying or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like things that were more productive at that time. It's just like a simple example of like how I would catch it, stealing my energy and focus. But forgiveness for me hasn't meant pretending things didn't hurt, but more about like seeing the humanity in people I love, even when they've gotten it wrong. And just starting with that as the foundation. And acceptance has looked like letting go of the fantasy version of how I thought things should be and like having expectations of how it should go. But, just meeting my family exactly where they were at. And I think that alone softened a lot of the tension I felt in the need to try to fix things or fix people. And I just decided to like accept where everyone is at and let us all show up as the version of ourselves that we were at that point in time, and still like to this day. And letting go of expectations definitely ties into that too, because I think letting go of asking people to change or expecting them to in order to meet my needs instead of meeting them where they are at, it created a healthier space for more honest connections rooted in love and not control.
Rooted in love and not control. Love it.
Yeah. And that I almost forgot the unconditional love piece.
Yeah.
That I feel like does tie it
Yes,
all together is that it's not that it all is rooted in my unconditional love.
Yeah.
Because I'm laughing because this was my favorite part and I almost forgot to say it. But it's not been passive for me. I've actively worked on like reflecting, what does this mean for me? It's a choice I make again and again to love without demanding perfection, without expectations. And I still have boundaries. And I have learned to also continue to love people even when things are messy. I'm looking at the bigger picture through it all. And I look at, how do I want to feel? How do I want to show up? And one of my core values is love and like being a loving person. And so connecting that all back to healing on the family level here. Now it's Lauren's turn to open up her heart.
I feel like you both brought up so many things, and it's funny, when I reflected on this one, I actually specifically had that perfectionism in mind. But as I heard you both sharing, I definitely was like, oh yeah, that's something I've done, or like this is a tool I've done too. And another thing that I don't think you guys mentioned in this scenario that I thought of as just a tool that's really helped me going off of Eileen saying like, oh, like taking that pause and kind of like sitting and reflecting with the emotions and what's going on before, responding instead of just like letting that fire go off. What's really helped me as a tool, that has in turn, I think, shifted some of these dynamics is writing letters. So not any letters that I even necessarily intend to send, but I sit down and I pour my soul out unfiltered, saying exactly what I want to say, exactly how I feel, and just like whatever I want to say to this person. And I noticed so many times that I feel like I just need that emotional release.
Yeah.
And then I realize I'm like, oh, I'm good. I don't even know that I honestly need to like have a whole thing with this person. I just had to process out the emotions. I had to get them out, and sometimes it does help me find, okay, I got out like the fiery emotions, right? And that raw feeling. And if it's something that I do want to bring up and talk with a certain person, then it allows me to get out the fire and then simmer things down and communicate them in a way, that is more aligned with where I want to be, right? But sometimes, like I said, it's just a release that I need sometimes, that's not even a conversation that needs a follow-up, but like a release.
Yeah.
That as a general tool, but to reflect specifically on how I shifted the perfectionism, I think what's helped me shift that dynamic in particular has been learning to release the pressure to be the good one and starting to show up as my full self, even when that means being honest about discomfort, setting boundaries, or not having it all together and just having those days where I'm like, it's just not a good day for me.
Just
right?
owning that. Yeah.
And owning that. And I think what really started to shift things was unlearning that belief and choosing to lead with authenticity instead of perfection. And I know that's been my awesome theme of 2025 so far is authenticity. But I started naming my feelings, sharing when something didn't feel good to me, and allowing myself to be seen in the messy, vulnerable moments. And it was very uncomfortable at first, especially because I had internalized that speaking up or showing struggle might disappoint the people I love. But the more I honored my truth, the more peace I found within myself. And something beautiful happened then. The relationships that were real and healthy held space for that version of me. The more I showed up fully, the more I attracted connection based on who I truly am, not who I felt pressured to be. And that's been the biggest shift, I think.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. It's been a beautiful
Mic drop.
Right.
Mic drop, baby. Yeah.
It's been beautiful to watch that transition for you, Lauren. Yeah. You should be proud of yourself.
I do have to say that when I first met you, how many years ago now? Like 8 years?
I think it's long. It's 10 now, I think.
10 now?
Because you and I met when we were 19, Anna? Yeah, I think.
Dude, whoa, time flies.
I know, we all ladies now. Oh, sorry, Ellen.
That is so crazy. But I say, okay, so I'm reflecting back just to say, like, I've known you for so long. And when I first met you, I don't think I would have known that about you, that you felt like maybe at some point you needed to hide yourself, certain parts of yourself, or be inauthentic in some way, because it's so ironic. I feel like you brought that out in me, just like you were saying, that's what has attracted the relationships in your life that are true connections and with meaningful people. I feel like of all people I know, you were one of the main ones to teach me, be yourself. Like, I'm going to love you no matter what. I learned that from our friendship. And it's
Aw.
something I'm forever grateful for.
You should also give yourself
Aw.
credit too, Hannah, because you probably didn't even realize you were eliciting a space where Lauren felt safe to be completely authentic. So it's like you were both like,
We were healing each other,
Yeah.
boo boo. We needed each other.
there was some mutual
But-
healing going on.
Cute. But I'm so glad. And also, like, you saying that, it's making me think back, like, maybe because I also, like, that's something that I always wanted, right? Was to be fully accepted for me. So I wanted to do that for the people I cared about, right? So, like, I always wanted you to know that I loved you no matter what, and that you could be your full self, because I'm going to love you anyway. And same goes for you too, Eileen, which I
Aw.
know you know as well. But it's like, oh, it's funny, like reflecting back. It's like, oh, it's so cool that you felt like I brought that out in you, Hannah, because I'm really glad, because it's something that I went out in life, I think, with that mindset of like, I just want to be that person that like people can be themselves around, right? Like, I love making goofy faces and being silly and being extra and doing all these things. But like, so I always wanted people to feel that comfort around me. So I'm so glad that I brought that out in you. And like Eileen said too, that like you also had created a space for me to truly show up as the person that I was. Because also, just pointing out, really literally at the time that you came in my life was the time I was losing other people in my life that I thought were true friends.
Mhm.
So it's like, I literally always thought, like, man, the universe knows what it's doing, because it like took out the garbage and then brought these beautiful relationships into my life, because I got Hannah and then I got you, Eileen, and it's like and now like you two have been in my life all this time. And
Creating our
yeah,
own
I'm just
family.
like, I know, I love it.
This is actually like a perfect segue to what else I was going to add to this episode. The friends leaving you, Lauren, I'll come back to that. I actually, even before your other example or your other tool of writing letters, that's exactly what Colin Tipping suggests in Radical Forgiveness. And I actually was doing that with you, Lauren, and other clients and whatnot before even reading this book. So it's so funny that it's like, of course, someone else thinks it's a good idea. It's great. But so Colin Tipping, he has, like in this book, Radical Forgiveness, he has like 4 stages of forgiving: prayers and affirmations, and then things for you to do like writing letters, and 3 stages in writing those letters. The first one is you let it all out, show no mercy, hold nothing back, and you just word vomit, and you can be as hateful as you want, you can be as mean as you need to be, like you get it out. Then the second one is trying to understand where they were coming from to some degree. Like it's funny because like doing the first one, it actually does soften and allow you to step into that second stage. And then the third stage is writing out as if just radically forgiving them. Even if you don't believe the words, you just do it from that place. It's literally like you just write it out, whether it feels real to you or not. So it's a great book. And I just want to point out some key points to listeners, because I think it can be forgiveness and certain family issues, like just go hand in hand. And it can be a great option, a good read for people maybe wanting to consider forgiving family. So the first one was suffering is when you make the mistake of believing something is happening to you rather than something is happening for you. Sometimes we really feel like what's going on in our family is a mistake. It is not supposed to be this way, when it's actually working out in your best interest. Next is forgiveness is a soul-to-soul transaction and not a personality thing. So that means you don't even have to like the person or what they did to forgive. And the paradox is, Colin Tipping says, is that oftentimes you warm up to them after forgiving. You actually do end up kind of liking them. The next one is acknowledging that this person is reflecting something that I need to love and accept in myself. So it's like, thank you for this gift. I'm now willing to take back the projection and own it as part of my shadow. I love and accept this part of me. And he says you don't need more analysis than that, which is very interesting because there's been a lot of like shadow work teachings that I've fallen upon, and just this deep dive and this overanalysis and healing it and figuring it out, where he's just saying just acknowledging that is enough. And that's where I was like, what? Really? And so in trying it, it's so true. There's no need to figure out what the projection was. You just acknowledge, all right, you're projecting something that's in me, and I'm just going to take it back as mine. He says, you don't have to initially believe in the words. Fake it at best is okay to start with. It's about like you're trying on the hat of forgiveness, and even that just starts the process. And I want to share one of his affirmations that maybe some of you out there may need to say to yourself. It goes, I now realize that my pain and suffering was the result of my not realizing that what seemed to be happening to me was actually happening for me, and that my family was simply mirroring for me something about me that I need to love and accept in myself, even though I do not know at this time what this is, but I am willing to love it anyway, whatever it is. I now realize that I somehow created this situation, and that my family was responding to my call for healing and was therefore my healing angel. So, for those of you guys who aren't in the mindset of forgiveness, though, I do want you to know it's okay if you need to say goodbye to someone, and that someone happens to be a family member. We forget that every family is so different, and I'm going to get heavy for a second here, but seriously consider that for some people, some family members are rapists, some family members are murderers, some family members are drug addicts, criminals, etc. So it's your right to question and decide on your boundaries and to stay true to those boundaries. And this is not to say that it has to get to those extremes I just mentioned before you say goodbye to someone. That is definitely not my point. But also that it can be a healthy, loving goodbye. Not ghosting, not cutting them off harshly, but out of love and respect for yourself. And I want to reference even my Reverend Tony. He's from the Trinity Center of Spiritual Living for anyone that's local in the Atlanta area. But so what if it's the other way around and a family member walks away from you? We're talking about you walking away from them. Tony says, we have the gift in goodbye. So he says, we have the gift in goodbye. When someone walks away from you, let them walk. It's not to be hateful, but to be faithful. So have faith in knowing that the universe always has a way of giving you what you need and to show up in a different person. What he's getting at is that the person leaving your life may be making room for a new kind of energy to enter. This man helped me so much with my family situation. He helped me see certain dynamics and release my judgment of certain actions. And people are doing and realizing that a lot of them are playing out things from their own childhood. He helped me release judgments and realize that whatever actions they take is not my concern, that I must remain pure in my intentions. And he helped me remember that getting the truth out is always what's best, and that we can't be concerned if that truth gets someone in trouble. He helped me understand that healing doesn't always look pretty. Sometimes for someone who has done wrong, healing is not going to be smooth and easy. That's the part we can't control. But as long as I focus on pure intentions of truth, honesty, and the safety of others, everything else will fall into place. And this can be true for you as well. There's always a way for everyone to fall into place when it comes, for everything, to fall into place when it comes to your family. Thank you so much for listening today, besties. We hope this episode left you feeling inspired and above all connected. Please remember to subscribe, share your thoughts, and share this episode to your besties, friends, and family if you need to. You can always check us out on Instagram and TikTok using our handle @thebestieperspective. Interact with us there, or if you prefer email, thebestieperspective@gmail.com. Like any good bestie would, we want to hear from you and about what you're getting from us. Reach out to me if you want to work with me and move through changing your family dynamics. You can find my services through our links provided, and I look forward to helping you find harmony and mutual benefit in whatever family strife you might be going through. We'll see you in our next episode where we discuss how to fuck up better, workshop insights with Lauren. Until next time, keep growing, keep glowing, and always trust in your own bestie perspective.